Welcome to Season 4 of My Wife the Dietitian, a fun, evidence-based weekly podcast about nutrition and healthy living. On today's show, we're joined by dietitian Tracy Mann from Everyday Nutrition. Tracy specializes in women's health, hormone balance, and digestive health. We cover a lot of ground in this episode. It's a good one. Stick around. Enjoying the show? You can help others find it and enjoy it too by giving us a 5-star rating or review. If you feel like reaching out to us with a question or comment, you can send us an email at mywifetherd@gmail.com. And don't forget to visit our website at mywifethedietitian.com, as well as our social media pages. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Enjoy the show. Welcome to My Wife the Dietitian. Hello, Sandra.
Hello, Rob.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. Today we have a guest, and it's someone that we had a lot of fun talking with because she has a lot of expertise in women's health and hormone health. We're excited to have dietitian Tracy Mann from Everyday Nutrition.
Yeah, it was a super fun conversation. She's got lots of information and lots of passion for what she does. You can really tell just listening to her describe everything that she describes. It's a really interesting episode, really valuable for the people that are affected by hormones, hormonal issues, that sort of thing is her specialty. So
yeah, we talked all about a variety of issues of inflammation and diet and common vitamin and mineral deficiencies in women having hormone fluctuations, plus strategies to manage belly fat. Plus, we start delving into PCOS, which is the most common endocrine disorder in the world. And Tracy's got lots of information on that. So stay tuned.
Yeah, it's a good one. Stick around.
Well, we're here with Tracy Mann from Everyday Nutrition, talking today all about women's health. And Tracy, thank you so much for joining us all the way from Colorado.
Yeah. Colorado.
Wow. Oh, could you tell the
Thanks
listeners
for having me?
Yeah, like what's your what you do in your day-to-day work and who you help with your clients?
Yeah, I'd love to share. So I'm a registered dietitian by profession, and I just happen to also be a women's health nerd. Anything hormone related and any symptoms that come from imbalanced hormones is what I like to dig into. And just utilizing my expertise and knowledge in health and nutrition, wellness and lifestyle, all the things that really can have a huge impact on how women are feeling. That's what I love to dig into.
Well, that makes sense. And you've have like the lived experience with 5 kids, right?
I do. Yeah. When I'm not
Oh, wow.
working with my amazing clients, I am usually doing something with one of the 5 of them. Yeah.
Oh, wow. And what are
Awesome.
the age spans?
I will have a 17-year-old, a 14-year-old, 12, 8, and 6.
Wow. Wow.
That's quite the spread. Wow.
It is a spread. I'm going to have a senior in high school and a kindergartner next year and
Wow.
everything in between.
Oh my gosh. Oh,
Quite the
wow. You
dynamic.
guys are busy and your husband and
Yes.
you have been married for 20 years.
Yes, we just celebrated our 20th anniversary this week. So
Awesome.
I don't know where that time went, but I think
Well,
the 5
we-
kids helped
I
it go
do.
by
Yeah,
a flash.
Exactly. Yeah, I bet.
Yes.
Oh my
But I
gosh.
have to say, I think that just being a busy woman, I feel like helps potential clients know that I'm really relatable into just the day to day, because there's so many things we could do to improve our health and wellness and nutrition. And there's, we were talking before we hit record about the trends and social media and all these things. But I think in the end, whatever you do has to fit your lifestyle. And I think it's just important that you find somebody that understands like what it's truly like to have to work things in and work around your life,
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I know. I think you're right. Because we did have that a little bit of a banter at the start about just all the different noise, like social media noise out there, and like the perfect way to live and what you can do with your behaviors and your eating and nutrition. And really, does it fit your lifestyle? Like, is it really, and is it causing you so much stress that you're actually not sleeping? And, there's all these ripple effects that are affecting your health too. So yeah, it's got to be that balance. 100%. And yeah, like I've heard you on other, podcast episode too, and just talking about the importance of balance in lifestyle, because you've been juggling word. Exactly with 5 kids and oh my gosh, and a practice, like a busy practice, like everyday nutrition, where you're helping women with their various health concerns like women's health and PCOS. Like, so could you explain that a little bit? Just because I think Rob probably doesn't know what that means.
Yeah, no, Rob does not know what that means. So I would love an explanation.
Yeah, let's talk really briefly about PCOS, because it really is the condition that kind of launched me into women's health. I had first of all, PCOS stands for polycystic ovarian syndrome.
Okay.
It is the most common endocrine related disorder in women, I think in North America, and it could be the world, because there are lots of other countries that are seeing rises in the incidence of PCOS. But it's not only an endocrine disorder, it's also a reproductive disorder. So you can have a wide range of symptoms with PCOS, but my launch into this was I started my private practice. And I think one of the things that a lot of women seek out help for is weight management. And I had these like handful of clients that were coming to me, and they all had PCOS in their medical history. And I had no idea what it was. I was 5 years into my profession, but I had worked in a hospital on a cardiology floor, and then I had worked in dialysis. So like PCOS hadn't really come up in my practice at that point. Right. So I had to learn what it was. I had to learn what PCOS even stood for. So I'm not surprised that maybe Rob wasn't aware of that. But anyway, as I started,
I'm out of the loop too.
I do feel like people who hear it and either have it or know someone that has it, they're like, oh my gosh, you get it then. And then other people, it's just like the blank stare of like, oh yeah. And then, they're going to Google later to look up what PCOS is. But I guess positively, as I was researching what it was and why these women might all be struggling with the weight management side of their health, was nutrition and lifestyle has a really huge impact in a positive way on the symptoms. And it just really fueled the fire to dig into that and lean into what I could and just get my hands on everything I could to learn about how to help women with it. And it not only launched my niche in PCOS, but just learning about hormones in the female body. It's helped me help women with infertility and perimenopause and menopause and like all the different life stages. You kind of have to have an idea of what hormones do in your body to be able to help women with their symptoms. So
yeah.
That's my history with PCOS.
Oh, that totally makes sense. And the fact that like so many clients that I see that have PCOS also have this link with increased risk for type 2 diabetes, increased risk of obesity. Like those are kind of the nutrition related kind of concerns. And is thyroid can get in there too in terms of, yes, I thought so. Okay. Like hypothyroid and
hypothyroid, gestational diabetes, anything related to kind of insulin resistance and blood sugar issues, definitely you have to be monitoring for with PCOS. And there's now a lot more research being done on mental health and wellness, binge eating disorder, and some other things too. It's fascinating in probably all of the wrong ways, but if you're a practitioner who helps women with that, it's an exciting day every single day.
No doubt.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Is that something you're born with? Is it a genetic thing, or is it something that you kind of acquire somehow, lifestyle or nutrition related, or how does that all work?
Yeah, I love the question because we don't actually know what causes PCOS or why women develop the symptoms that get the diagnosis of PCOS. They're looking at some links with other autoimmune conditions. I do think genes probably play a role, but whether they're already turned on at birth or if there's the lifestyle and environment factors that could turn the genes on, they're still looking into that.
Right.
There was a podcast by a pretty well-known physician with a lot of listeners in the US, and he kind of came out saying that it was caused by the way people eat. And I think in some ways that could be true as far as maybe some of the additives and chemicals and things that could be in some foods people eat. But I guess his innuendo was a little bit more of like people just making bad choices. And it didn't really go over very well in the dietitian world here. The other thing is it's very complex.
It got a lot of views though, I'm sure, right?
A ton.
Right?
A ton. And I took a different view rather than get, really, I don't know, bent out of shape over it. I kind of wanted to listen with an open mind about it. And I was like, I can see what he's saying, that nutrition can impact your symptoms with PCOS. Like, let's take that and kind of lean into it rather than just get mad that maybe it got interpreted as people are just making really bad choices all the time.
Right. Totally. Yeah. Well, it's similar like with diabetes, right? Because there's a link with nutrition, what you're eating, but then there's, just the day-to-day living and, dealing with all of the information for people. I mean, it's just so overwhelming.
Yeah. And I think a role of a dietitian should be to really not only know the knowledge of the nutrition and be able to just, give that to people, but also to look at their lifestyle and how can they fit recommendations in that'll help them with their symptoms rather than like, here's this cookie cutter approach. If it doesn't work for you, then you're doing it wrong. It's more of this cookie cutter approach didn't work for you. Let's see what can.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. Isn't that so true? I mean, I've seen clients that have already tried to work with numerous other different professionals and they're just exacerbated. They like, can't I just have this? And isn't it okay to eat pizza once in a while with my family? Or, just asking for some guidance, but having a bit more leeway in terms of their lifestyle, because it can be so detrimental to be like you said, the cookie cutter approach that can actually be very harmful in terms of just relationship with food. And because that's the other thing we see with like PCOS. And I know that this episode is not about PCOS, but it's okay.
It is now.
Yeah, exactly. We'll have to do another one.
Totally. We will. But just the fact that like the, I'm sure eating disorder link, like just the relationship with food can be so impacted. Like people can develop eating disorders or binge eating problems when they've had that diagnosis of PCOS because of now having to think of, they have to control everything they're eating and, all of that aspect of it too. So it's just, it's a can of worms, eh?
It is. And the dysfunction of hormones in the body that comes to play. PCOS is like, it's a syndrome and it's a health condition different than just a life stage. But I see it with other women that I work with who don't have PCOS. It's like that hormone imbalance can just drive so much of behavior. And, if foods fill us up or they don't, or, if we restrict and then binge. Again, it's very complex, but I think relationship with food in any stage of life is so important because it can have such a detrimental impact on just our overall healthy lifestyle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I ask one more question about this since we're on it and we're kind of halfway through me understanding it? Can you just kind of simply like just a quick explanation of what some of the symptoms are and how the food, like the diet and lifestyle, helps that?
Yeah, I'll see if I can do it in super close notes. So first of all, to be diagnosed with PCOS, you have to have 2 of 3 diagnostic criteria. You have to either have elevated androgens, which are the male hormones in the body.
Mm-hmm.
Women have male hormones in the body, but we don't want them at too high of a level.
Right.
Or we'll start to have issues. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So elevated androgens, irregular or non-existent periods.
Mm-hmm.
And a third criteria is actual cysts on your ovaries that would be discovered through an ultrasound. So there are people with PCOS who do not have the cysts on their ovaries, but they have irregular or non-existent periods and the elevated androgens. The elevated androgens are greatly impacted by elevated insulin.
Okay.
So about 75 to 80% of women with PCOS have at least mild, if not very severe, insulin resistance, and it drives those elevated androgens. Those elevated androgens can then shut off the body's ability to ovulate, which can cause those irregular periods. And then actually not ovulating can cause those cysts on the ovaries because you're not ovulating eggs from your follicle. So it's all tied in. I like to kind of dig into the insulin resistance side of things, but as I said, it's complex. So it might not be insulin resistance. And for 25% of people I work with, they don't have that. So we look at other things too.
Huh. And that's where diet comes in, is the insulin part, right? Like controlling your sugar, I guess, and what you eat, and to keep the insulin where it should be.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Exactly.
Okay. I was confused as to how it would affect the hormones, but that makes perfect sense because the symptoms don't seem like they're like GI related, which you would think a diet would impact that more than anything. But I guess our bodies are all connected. So not
That's
our
what I tell
bodies,
people.
you know, our internal parts of our bodies are all interconnected. So yeah.
Yes, and they all communicate with each other. And so I do have a large portion of clients who are having digestive issues, and that actually impairs how your body is managing hormone balance. The liver's job is to package excess hormones up, like excess androgens, get it to the digestive tract so that you can eliminate it from your body. But if you're struggling with, let's say, constipation, those can get, stay in the body longer than we'd want, and they can continue to impact you. I like to dig in. I can get really deep sometimes, but yeah.
It's a total puzzle, hey?
It's a total puzzle. The most fun, interesting puzzle.
Totally.
Yeah. I always equate it to, this is my guy brain thinking, but I always equate it to like a mechanic working on a car. It's the same kind of problem solving. It's like your client comes in and says, "Oh, I got this funny sound." Well, maybe not your client, but maybe they do. "I got this funny sound coming from the rear, and I need you to have a look at it." And yeah, you're just going through the process and looking at the symptoms and trying to find a solution. It's really fascinating work.
It is.
Except, Rob, the body is, not a car.
No, there's no sounds coming from the rear.
I get it. But
that's what I said. It's my guy brain explaining it, right? But it's detective work, It's neat. It's not black and white, and it's different with every person, and you kind of just have to dig through and look at everything and understand the whole process. And yeah, it's neat.
Yep. So I read this recently. I think it was either 52 or 54 medical specialties where physicians, can go on to be certified, in a certain specialty. And there are 52 or 54 specialties. Wow. And it's not uncommon to have a client coming in and they've met with many specialists that all have their own focus on something. And what I really love to do is be like, okay, you've got all that information and there's a lot. How does this all tie in together? Because your body is all working together. And I honestly don't think that a lot of my clients come to a dietitian thinking that a dietitian could or would do that. Yeah.
Right. They just want the diet.
They do. And then I start to explain, and they're like, "Well, I just thought you were going to tell me what to eat or what not to eat." And I'm like, "Well, we'll get to that." But we have to figure out what is going to be the right plan first.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. As the body's all connected, like you said, and the hormones, I mean, they can drive cravings, they can drive behavior, and then, the insulin and like the blood sugar rise. So like it's all related, and our system is all related. So like you said, having, a heart specialist and an endocrinologist and like all these different,
Yep.
medical specialties, they look through their own lens, but
Yep.
yeah, the person is a whole person. And that's kind of like the holistic approach, right? Like looking at the whole person, the root cause, like what's happening, what symptoms are you having? Let's not just treat the symptoms. Let's get to the root and see what's going on, and then maybe help, work with the body so it feels better, and maybe the symptoms can start to resolve. But yeah, it's just so, like you said, complex.
It is.
Wow. So, okay. First question.
First
question is hilarious.
Now we can shift into part 2.
Yes,
Exactly. Women's health and like women through like midlife. So how can a woman going through the menopause transition manage inflammation with diet?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that each person needs to do, and I'm hoping, by this phase of life, women are pretty well attuned to their body. Some are more than others, and it's okay if you feel like I know nothing. I never listen to my body. I'm always trying to override the system. But what causes inflammation in a body can vary from person to person. And so it's not uncommon for me to have somebody come in. We'll end up either trying to figure out, kind of do like a food log symptom type, questionnaire. Or I'll have some clients who just don't want to take the time to do that. And we will actually do some food sensitivity testing to see if there is something they're eating causing inflammation. And we can really fine tune a nutrition plan based on that. But for a general person who maybe doesn't want to do that or isn't really sure, if they even have inflammation in the body, I think it goes back to basics, trying to eat wholesome, nutritious food, trying to eliminate ultra processed food as much as possible, and kind of saving those things as more sometimes foods. I mean, I'm a mom of 5, and someday I'll probably have a lot of grandkids. So when I'm going through menopause, I'm not going to think that I'm going to eat perfectly to reduce inflammation all the time. But I think as we age and our bodies, they've withstood a lot, we do have to sometimes be a little bit more careful than we did in our younger years when we were just a little more resilient than the middle age years.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It's nothing bad. We just have to be aware of it. And I think sometimes we want to think, well, we can do all the things we've always done or eat all the things we've always done. And it's not always the case if you want to feel really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's so true. Yeah. Yeah. No, and even just like your daily activity, your sleep, your stress, like it's all part of the puzzle in terms of how you feel the next day. And as you age, you're not quite as resilient as you were when you were younger.
Exactly. Yeah. And even like I'll have people who they've always eaten pretty well and been very, very active, but they're starting to feel that inflammation in their joints and things. And we do have to kind of go back to the drawing board of like, okay, you've been running for 30 years and your knees are shot. Like we might need to look at a different type of activity that's just a little bit easier on your joints that are inflamed. And there are things to do. There's, some phytonutrients, like turmeric gets a lot of positive press, or even like omega-3s. And, there's ways we can supplement nutrients into the body to help with the inflammatory process and try to decrease some of those symptoms. But I still think you need to look at the overall lifestyle to really hit it hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because I mean, also like a supplement isn't going to fix a kind of poor eating habits.
No. I wish it could. It would be so much easier to be able to eat junk and just take a supplement. It doesn't work that way.
It's amazing how many people do that though, right? It's like, as long as I have my multivitamin every day, I can eat whatever I want because I'm getting all my nutrients.
Or they'll try to out exercise poor eating, and that doesn't work either.
Oh,
Yeah.
true. Right. Yeah. But that creates more free radicals with your, the oxidation of with exercise. And so you actually do need to increase those, colors, the leafy greens and all the vegetables and fruits with their natural, phytochemicals and antioxidants. And yeah, that's, oh my gosh, it's, there's a lot to it. So inflammation. And like you said, it's hard to even know if someone has inflammation unless they have obvious, symptoms, like maybe they have gas and bloating and, like IBS kind of, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
even diabetes and their blood sugars are kind of elevated. So it really depends on what is happening with them and like what's the inflammation, like what's going on. Is their skin, breaking out? So it's hard to know exactly the cause, but with some, like you said, investigation and like looking at the puzzle, it kind of helps you get to see, oh, look at, they're hardly sleeping well at all. They're very stressed with work and it doesn't matter what they're eating because it's going to, affect their body in this inflammatory way.
Yeah. And I think, as we look at that kind of menopausal point of time, sleep is one of the crazy things, just with the changes in estrogen in the body and the drops in some of those hormones. And they're not sleeping well because their hormones are kind of tanking. And so that's where my hormone nerdiness kind of comes in, is kind of looking at, well, how do we support all of that? I've even had a couple of clients, they came in, they were desperate, they were having joint pain. We decided to do food sensitivity testing just to see if we could pinpoint things. And interestingly, these clients all were reacting to eggs.
Really?
And I thought, oh my gosh, so there's sometimes when we've gone through stressful times in our life, our immune system will kind of get heightened, and it unfortunately will attach to a food protein, and we start to have inflammation as if we were introducing, a germ or something in the body.
Oh, wow.
And that's kind of how that can present in our older years. It's very interesting. So like, I used to eat eggs all the time with no problem. And I'm like, I know. But some of that comes back then to what is the health of the gut? Why are these proteins, coming out of the digestive tract to even, have an immune response enacted upon it? So, just as our body ages, just like we lose muscle mass as we age, we also can start to have loosening up of our organs and our digestive tract. So I don't know, again, it can be complex. I think a great place to start is with, the multi-colorful produce and lean proteins, and just trying to cut out as much as the ultra processed stuff as you can most of the time. And then if that doesn't work, then you start working with somebody to dig in a little bit more.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And like you were saying, like someone having, the joint pain and all these like symptoms of, kind of in the menopause transition, we look also at the body, like you said, and there's hormone receptors on all parts of our body, like on all our systems. So, if our hormones are tanking, then that is going to impact how your body, reacts basically, and not having those, hormones available for those receptors might cause, joint pain or inflammation or, different things. So that's a good thing to look at, is like, okay, what's happening and why? And then also looking at the reaction, as you mentioned, like to egg protein. Maybe they were in some sort of illness or a stressful situation, and that's what they were having, like a lot of eggs. Yeah. And now they just don't tolerate them the same way. And that can change too, right? Over time, like that's the whole thing with the gut. It's so amazing how it can change, and things that you didn't tolerate, like foods that you didn't tolerate years ago, you might be able to in the future. So it's kind of like, it's not a forever, like our bodies are always changing, which is, it's actually hopeful. Like it's like a hopeful message, right?
Yeah. That's what I like to impart, not gloom and doom, but like hope and optimism, because it's so true. Our bodies are very, very resilient.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of that, so the other question I had are about the vitamins and minerals. So are there any common um, deficiencies, like common vitamin or mineral or other nutrient deficiencies that you see when
Yeah.
people are having like hormone fluctuations?
Yes, I think one that's often tested, so we can actually look at it, is vitamin D. Vitamin D is actually a hormone in the body. It gets utilized as a hormone, and it is fairly commonly tested at the physician's office. And so we usually get a pretty good look, and it's oftentimes low unless somebody is supplementing. And when I talk to women about hormone balance, like we have to look at vitamin D because that is a hormone, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm also not always upon testing, but just through like looking at food records and really analyzing the types of foods my clients are commonly eating. I think our mineral status is not great.
Yes.
And we need minerals for one, bone health, because as our estrogen drops in the perimenopause and the menopause phase of life, it also decreases bone density. And so we have to look at other ways to remineralize our bones. And the unfortunate thing is, once we've lost our bone mass, it's very hard to put it back on, but we can keep it from continuing, which I think is important.
Right, right. Yes. Yeah. I like to kind of stop the acceleration of how quickly we're losing the bone.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's one of the problems with ultra processed food. Even when we're young and we feel like our bodies are tolerating it well, it's just very stripped of natural nutrients. And so unless, you know, you're being proactive and either making sure you're getting other really nutrient dense foods into your diet, or unless you've worked in a multivitamin of some sort, it's going to be very hard for the body to get those minerals in. And I would say probably if we looked more at other vitamins, we'd probably start to see maybe some deficiencies in the B vitamins. I think B12 is another commonly low one. A lot of people have moved, you know, there was a movement, let's say, in the 80s and 90s where like animal proteins are bad for you because of the cholesterol.
Yeah.
And so people are moving more toward plant-based diets, which I think there's a place. Obviously, I love plants. I want people to eat more plants, but they are not good sources of B12. So that's another one that I'm just, as I'm, you know, trying to encourage women to be eating more protein to maintain their muscle mass. I also want to look at like what types. Are we getting a good variety, or are we maybe needing to supplement some of those vitamins?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And going back to when you were talking about the bone density, that's another thing I see, like as people age and women age, and they're so worried about the number on the scale, and they start to do kind of more, you know, dieting, or even like starting to use Ozempic and the GLP-1 antagonizer medication to help with their weight, you know, to manage their weight, but then they're not as hungry, and then they're not eating all of their nutrition. Like they're probably not getting everything they need. And that could totally impact their bone mass. And that's the thing, like when they look at the scale, you don't know if you're losing bone. And a lot of women are starting to lose bone, especially if they're going through menopause or have already been through, and they just they're not building bone as much. So that's one thing that really I stress with my clients is like, you know, you got to make sure you're getting your nutrition first, you know, like let's do this in a more like slow and sustainable way, and not just, you know, oh, I don't like the number on the scale, and I just don't feel good in my body, and I've got belly fat, and I've just, you know, all of these messages we're hearing. And the thing is, like, do you really want to, in, you know, 5 to 10 or 15 or 20 years, be frail and elderly and, you know, basically have really low bone density and, you know, fall and fracture? And, you know, like, it's just, there's so much like the ripple effects of how we're eating and our lifestyle now to our future self. So it's just, it's something that we don't hear enough about, is like that importance of bone mass and bone density, you know, through our lifetime.
Yeah. I have a friend, she went through early menopause. in her early 40s, and she's 8 or 10 years older than me, but she was starting to have some arthritis in her hip. And anyway, they were saying, oh, your bone density is low and all of this. And I said, because you went through early menopause, you started this destruction. I didn't say destruction, but it creates a nice visual, right?
Yeah.
But of decreasing your bone density. And because you were young and active, they didn't really think to be screening you for your bone health until you started to have these arthritis symptoms. And she's like, Tracy, I just needed you 10 years ago, because if you look a certain way, or you're certain kind of active, or you're, you don't fit the picture of maybe presenting as somebody with bone issues, it gets missed. I feel the same way with insulin resistance. If people are thin and, they just don't look like an insulin resistant patient, the doctor misses it early on until it becomes prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. And it's like, we should be looking at these things. And even if everything comes back normal, whether it's bone density scan or it's insulin or anything else you're testing, even if it comes back normal, you have a nice baseline to then monitor as you age.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's so true. The baselines are great. Even just like having that bone density scan at some point midlife, right? Just to know like how strong your bones are and if you're at risk for osteoporosis.
Yep.
And is that a common thing that they test for, or is that something that they would sort of want to see symptoms before they go down that road? Like the bone density scan?
I don't know about where you're at. I feel like where I'm at, most of the time it's only if they think there's a risk, maybe you've already broken the bone, so they decide to check it.
Right.
I think some doctors will order it if a patient asks. Insurance may or may not cover it. So sometimes they're hesitant to push a patient to go check if they're afraid, that there will be a big out-of-pocket cost or something like that. That's where I also work with my clients and just my friends and family about advocating for yourself. If you want a lab or a test done and it may or may not be covered by insurance, but you want that information, like push for it, because you have the right to know whatever you want to know about your body, and somewhere, some way you can get it done if your primary care doctor won't order it.
Right. Yeah. I think that's kind of becoming more necessary with all the different issues and just the nature of the healthcare system too. It seems like they're struggling in a lot of places and a lot of services aren't being offered and they need to be, and things are being missed. Or like your friend's scenario there, I'm sure if she had some different information earlier on, her scenario would be a little different, right?
Yep. And for your listeners who may be wondering, well, how can I, get that checked? A DEXA scan has been the gold standard for, I think, as long as I've been practicing, so almost 20 years. But I do think the bioelectrical impedance, machines like an InBody is a common one, or even some scales now. They may not be as accurate as a DEXA, but I think they still give you a pretty good sense of what they'll look at the different types of mass in your body, including visceral fat and adipose tissue, muscle mass, and bone mass. And it at least gives you a place to start evaluating yourself.
Yeah,
absolutely.
An issue.
Yeah,
good information.
Yeah. It really is. Yeah, it's. I think that's the thing that people miss when on their old, standard scales is just that number, and it's going up, and they're feeling, just like they need to lose weight, and then a lot of times it's just the wrong way, a wrong approach, because it could be very detrimental on their future health in terms of their bone mass and just, muscle too. Right. So it's tricky.
And nutrient status in general, which is what kind of tipped us off on this topic for a minute. But if you see the number on the scale going up, our natural tendency is to eat less. If we're eating less, we're just naturally not getting as much nutrients in, even if it's the most nutrient dense foods in the world. If you're eating less of it, you're not getting as many nutrients in. I do think looking at other parameters of health other than the number on the scale is a lot more helpful for that long-term health.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And yeah, I mean, with one of the other questions we had, and we kind of covered it a little bit, was about the strategies to help manage, the visceral fat, or, belly fat in quotes. I hate that term, through menopause.
People know what it is, though. When you say it, they're like, yep, I know exactly what that is.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So, I mean, it's like the big question, like, how can I manage that? But yeah, I mean, a lot of the strategies we're already talking about, but how do you help people?
One of the things I really encourage, and this is part of that advocating for yourself as a patient with your doctor or your healthcare practitioner, whoever you choose to work with, I really think insulin resistance is a huge contributor to belly fat. Insulin is a hormone in the body. We've mentioned it a few times, but we haven't talked about what it actually is. Insulin is a hormone in the body, and it has a role of attaching to a receptor on the cell to tell the cell that, hey, there's glucose, there's blood sugar out here. Let it come in for energy. And really, insulin has this one job of getting glucose out of the bloodstream. With insulin resistance, insulin, the hormone, and its receptor are not able to, they're not communicating well. They should fit like a key in a lock, and they're just not. It's like the wrong key. Insulin has to do something with that blood sugar, even if it's not an extremely high blood sugar. If it's not able to get into the cell for energy, it takes it to fat for storage. A lot of this process happens, it happens throughout the body. There's insulin receptors on, I think, every cell in the body, but fat cells can take on that extra glucose without even needing the receptor to be working really well. And a lot of this is managed at the level of the liver. And if you think the liver is right there in your abdomen, it's very easy to just start shunting that excess glucose out into the abdomen for storage in that fat tissue.
That's a great explanation.
I hope so.
No, seriously,
I've been finding that a really long time.
Yeah, well done. That made a lot of sense.
Good.
I could picture everything as you were talking, and that's a really good way of understanding what's going on, because I often wondered how sort of the sugar, I guess, is the insulin, the glucose, right? And how that kind of translates into belly fat. Yeah. So now I know.
And as we age, just naturally, we start, those receptors just, I equate it to getting worn out, just like the rest of how we feel as we get older. We just feel a little more worn out sometimes, but that's how I think of the insulin receptors on the cells, is they're just starting to get a little worn out. And it happens naturally. It tends to happen to women a little bit earlier on in life, even starting with like perimenopause, even the couple years before perimenopause. And so in the hormone imbalances can start to impact insulin resistance as well. And so I just think that's why women as a gender tend to struggle a little bit more, but you can start to see it in aging men. You can see it in people who drink a lot of alcohol. You start to notice like, oh, that could be insulin resistance,
Interesting.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And then the fact that, like you said, the liver is such a crucial organ in this whole process, and that, the incidence of fatty liver and non-alcoholic fatty liver is rising so quickly. And it's, there's so many different reasons for that. But I mean, that's related too with this, right? So it's like you said, the body is all one, and, we're not just one system, like it's all connected. So,
yep. Well, that's why if you start looking at a lot of different systems of areas, a person is experiencing dysfunction, and you start to just kind of peel the onion a little bit, you start to be like, it all seems to be extremely related to this one thing. I'm usually landing on insulin resistance. Not always, though. I don't want everyone listening to think, well, I must have it, easy to test for it. But yeah, you just start to see some common denominators that Doesn't mean they don't still need specialists to help sometimes, but you can at least start to get a good foundation to address that common denominator.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. And I mean, just getting some, regular blood work, at least yearly, is a good idea too, just in terms of to know what's going on with your hemoglobin A1C and your fasting blood sugar and your glucose levels, and not to mention your thyroid and cholesterol and just the, your risk of anemia, like what's going on with your red blood cells. And so it's just all of these ways to know what's going on for your health, and not just looking at the scale, because so many people use that as their, metrics for their health, but it's not really that reliable.
Exactly. Yep. 100%.
Yeah. Wow. This has been it's so much information. We've gone on this is beef tours, and it's been great. Oh my God, we'll definitely have to get you back on the show for sure, because there's so much.
I know. I could talk for days. I tell people that. That's why I told you I could talk to a wall if I was left to myself, because there's just so much to talk about.
That's perfect. You should be on lots of different podcasts, because I think, you're so good at this.
Hey, Tracy, I got a quick question for you. Just given the fact that you're a dietitian and you have 5 kids that are a huge span in ages, how do you feed them? What tips would you give to parents who are because so many parents struggle with feeding their kids, even if they have 1 or 2 kids, because kids they like their gummy bears and their cookies and all the things that kids like. And then teenagers like to eat bags of Doritos 3 at a time. And how do you deal with that? Try to keep them healthy. And any wisdom on that?
When I became a mom, I just told myself, I'm not feeding my kids differently than we feed ourselves. And I've been blessed that I don't have kids that have any special dietary needs. We definitely have people in our community and our friend group that do. And so maybe I would change my tune if that was the case. But just, things that my husband and I were eating is what we would offer the kids. And I like to be, pretty simple. Do I have a protein? Do I have a vegetable? Do we have some starch? And then where do I need to fill in the gaps? And I'd say I'm fortunate again. My kids have been very healthy, and I think that has been a good strategy. And my other thing was, and this is probably just coming from practice more than anything else, but I was seeing so many female clients that had a bad relationship with food, and it started in their childhood, in their home life. And I was like, that just cannot be me. So we've never been super restrictive. My kids know what protein is, and I've very much encouraged protein their whole life. But yes, I was just thinking, my kids had gummy bears the other day and I didn't freak out, but I'm like, once this bag is gone, you're not getting any more for a while. So it's balance. My most favorite word in the whole world. Totally. But it's just balancing that, and then kind of educating as they get older of well, why don't I want you to eat 5 bags of Doritos?
Right.
I'm not going to tell you never to have a Dorito either. Let's just have a conversation. And being in the profession I am, I can probably get a little deeper, but I think anybody can have a nice talk with their children about that and just include them, rather than making these black and white rules and they don't even know why, and other people are doing this or that,
Yeah.
Oh, totally.
So balance is kind of the key instead of the restrictions, and which makes perfect sense.
So.
And I like that. Good answer.
And just what the family is eating. I love that. The family meals, and this is what we eat. So this is, and I just read a study. This is so cool because it relates to this, especially when people have kind of picky kids when they're growing up and they worry about their future health. And there was a study that showed that kids that were very picky at home, when they went to university and they're in the lineup for the cafeteria picking the food out of, their choices, and they will actually say they never ate broccoli at home because they just refused it and they were always picky around broccoli. They will choose the broccoli because it's familiar to them. They will choose the broccoli this. I love this. I love it. They will actually, because they've been, exposed to it at home in their home life with their family. They know it's a safe food, or like they feel like, okay,
Yep.
so it's like, I think the big thing is just variety and, like you said, balance, and just, what the family's eating, and having like lots of different variety. And so kids can get curious and learn to recognize different foods and enjoy different foods. And even if they don't enjoy it, maybe one day they will, and not to get too worried about it.
And I think with the, we mentioned before the GLP-1 agonists and just the dieting culture and the only focusing on the scale and stuff. I always encourage my clients who are moms, to feel confident and comfortable in eating a normal meal, especially around their kids, like, which is most often dinner time if the kids are school age, because they're usually eating lunch at school. But I'm like, you can't be drinking your shake or, just not eating. They're going to start to wonder, why isn't mom eating? Or why is she eating way different than us? And, occasionally I might choose like, I love salmon. None of my family likes salmon. And so sometimes I'll choose that to be my protein when I'm serving something else to the family. And then I'll just tell them, like, I'm having this different because you guys don't like it. And I'm not going to try to make you eat stuff that you really don't like, because I need
more
to get
salmon
some
for
food in
you
today. Yeah. So, I don't push, like, they've all tried it. I've seen them. They don't love it. So I'm like, I'll still eat it, and we'll make up for it some other way with the kids. But
there you go.
Oh,
You got to get some of that smoked candied salmon. I probably like that stuff, because that's
exactly.
That's
it's
like
sweet.
gold.
You love it.
That's so good.
That's right. And
now your mouth is watering.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. Just going back to the, like, kind of having special meals, drinking your shake when the family's eating their meal, it is definitely sending a message to the family. And now you probably are seeing clients that grew up in the 80s when their mom took them to Weight Watchers at age 8. And, the mom was like weighing all their food all the time and always on a different diet. And so that definitely impacts the kids as they grow up, their relationship with food and relationship with their body and their self-confidence in their body. And like, I see it all the time where I ask the question, how was it when you were in your family home when you were a kid, eating meals together? And like, what was the discussion around the table? Was there, talk about different diets or, body size and different, judgments around different body sizes in our society and in our town or whatever. And, it's a really good reflection for people. Or they're starving kids in Africa, so you have to finish everything on your plate and you can't leave,
the plate club.
Totally.
I've seen all of everything you just said. I've had lots and lots of clients like that.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the noise is just being like, there's more noise now with social media. Like, the volume has increased in terms of messaging, and it's so hard to navigate. But, I think as parents, it's a big responsibility because, kids, it's not just what we say, but what we're doing. So kids watch what we do. They're like, they watch everything. So we really have to kind of, be careful around like the diet culture messages, like, and what we're doing with our own body and how, we're kind of portraying ourselves in our family.
Yes. It's such
Wow,
a big challenge for sure.
We could do a whole another episode on this topic.
We've got lots of sub episodes to follow up on.
Totally. Oh my gosh. Holy, this is great though. I love it. I love this discussion. It's so rich, and there's just like, it's just being a dietitian, like, it's just such a interesting field, because the information is always changing in terms of the science, and then helping clients like navigate culture and food and like the changing food landscape, like what's available in the market. And it's just, there's so much, and I love it because it's ever changing, and it's always challenging.
It is. I've told people, I do not know truly what I would do if I wasn't a dietitian. I don't wish I was something else. And I love, at least for me specifically, that I've been able to to find a niche that just lights my fire, but I also get to do pediatric nutrition. Like, I get to take care of my kids. And there's a psychology side, and it's a nice blend of a lot of different areas, and it's very rewarding.
Yes.
That sounds exact. Yeah. So many different areas it covers. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, we have one more question. One more question for you.
Okay. Okay.
I got it.
Okay.
I get to ask this. It's a fun one.
It's a fun one.
Yeah. Potluck dinner. What's your go-to if you're bringing something, or a big family dinner? I guess would work.
I think
in your
every
case
day is
as
a
well.
potluck for Tracy.
I was going to say, yeah. What's your regular Wednesday night dinner?
No one's bringing me food. It's a one-sided potluck.
That's true.
Well, I love bringing food to potlucks, and I'm from a small community in Nebraska originally, and we did all sorts of family and community things. My thing, and it may shock everyone who listens, it's a salad, and I'm using air quotes because it's more like a dessert, but it's a salad called frog eye salad. It has little macaronis called, I don't even know how you say it, Ancini de pipis. They're little balls. They look like tapioca balls, but they're a macaroni product. And then it's got mandarin oranges, pineapple, and it's got you use the pineapple juice off the pineapples in the can to make a little sauce, and then you blend it all with Cool Whip.
Wow. That is so different. Oh my gosh, we're going to totally have to
look
try
at
that one up.
Salad.
Okay.
It could just be a Nebraska thing, but now that we live in Colorado, that's what I make, and everybody knows it's Tracy's salad.
That's
She's
awesome.
the dietitian, and more like a dessert, but it's a treat. We don't have it a lot, and it's one of my sons. So I have 3 boys and 2 girls. One of my sons, this is his absolute favorite thing. So it's definitely a treat, but that is what I make.
That's awesome.
It.
Super unique.
And if I'm not making that salad, I always volunteer to bring dessert. If there's a sign up for something, I like making cookies and cookie bars and stuff. So
awesome.
This is the balance. Mm-hmm.
I like that.
I'm just looking up the frog eye salad now. That looks really fun.
I'll just send you my recipe.
Yeah, we'll throw it in our newsletter. We have a weekly newsletter. We usually try to share some. I don't like recipes myself. I like food ideas, and then I get to figure out what I want to do with it.
So you might want to use the recipe though.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds fun. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's awesome.
Of course.
Oh, I love that. That sounds so sweet and delicious, but tangy too. And, and it's got that kind of pina colada kind of flavor with the Cool Whip and the pineapple.
Very summery.
Totally. Yes. Yeah. Oh, sounds delicious. Smart boy there. Like that. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And this has been a great conversation. And I am excited about, sharing your link to Everyday Nutrition. So your services for our listeners in the show notes. And it'll be, I'm excited to listen to after Rob's edited and produced it. It always sounds really good. And
I'm sure he does awesome. I'm looking forward to it and sharing it as well. And thank you so much for inviting me on.
Yeah, right on. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I learned a lot. And so that's a big plus as well. So thanks for that.
Good. I'm glad. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tracy. We'll talk again.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
That was a great interview with Tracy.
Yeah, it sounds like she helps a lot of different people with different hormonal related issues. I didn't realize there was such a broad spectrum and so many people affected by that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, PCOS, the most common endocrine disorder in the world. Yeah, it's amazing. And just all the discussion about lifestyle and diet and how it can impact hormones and how we're feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, lots of information in that one, but I'm guessing for the people who are affected by that, they'll sure appreciate listening to everything she has to say.
Yeah, and I hope people check out her website, Everyday Nutrition, with Tracy Mann, dietitian. It's a wealth of information. She's got some blog articles on there and lots of good information about women's health and hormone health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll post the links to her website and her social media pages in the show notes. So be sure to check that out. If you want more information about what we're doing, you can visit our website. It's mywifethedietitian.com. We've got a blog. We've got all sorts of different articles on there as well. Lots of information there to peruse. We've also got a weekly newsletter you can subscribe to. It's free. It comes out once a week. And there's lots of great information there. We've got recipes. We've got vegetable ideas. We've got tips of the week. We've got updates. We've got all sorts of things in there. So it's worth signing up for. You can do that through the website. You can also email us your questions. If you are curious about anything, we will turn it into a show, pretty much. There's lots of questions. Usually, if you have the question, someone else will too. So don't be shy. Let us know what's on your mind. You can also visit us on our social media pages. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Feel free to reach out to us there as well. And if you like the show, let us know. We love hearing your feedback. You can rate and review the show on any platform that you're listening to it. And also share with a friend. That's super helpful as well.
If you have any questions about drug-nutrient interactions or supplement and food interactions or medication and food or medication and supplements, please email us and we are going to get Dean Elby, pharmacist, back on the show with us.
Mm-hmm. We interviewed Dean a few weeks ago, and he's going to be joining us on a regular basis to answer your questions about everything Sandra just said there, medications and food interactions. So he is a wealth of knowledge. So let us know your questions as far as medications go, and we will let Dean know, and that will be on an upcoming episode. That is it for today. Thanks again to Tracy Mann for joining us, and be sure to check her pages out. We'll be back on Wednesday with Nutrition Nuggets. So until then, have a fantastic week. Thanks for joining us today on My Wife the Dietitian. If you like what you heard, don't be shy. Leave us a comment or review, and be sure to share our podcast with your friends. If you'd like to hear more, hit that subscribe button. You can also follow us on our social media pages for updates, episode trailers, and other odds and ends. For more info and links on what we discussed on today's episode, check the show notes. We'll be back next week with another informative and fun-filled episode.